Good afternoon, everyone. We are sharp at 4. So I'll take the liberty to start, and Maitri and team, do let me know if I need to wait for a few more participants to log in, or I'll get started. Okay. So yeah. So thank you everyone who has taken the time to join, and I'm sure this will be time well worth it. I'll start sharing my screen in a while, but quick introduction. I am Balbir Singh. I am the COO at Great Place to Work India, and I have my colleague Akshat Shah, who is a Vice President, Sales and Client Experience, nationwide at Great Place to Work India. He will join us for the Q&A later on, and I will have my colleague Maitri and Ishika supporting us today. So I'll just start sharing my screen. Someone can just give me a thumbs up, and then we can get on to the agenda, because we have a lot to cover in the 30 minutes that we have. So people will keep popping in, and in the meanwhile, we'll get started. Let me know once my screen is visible.
Yes, we can proceed.
Good. Thank you, Akshat. Okay, so as you would have seen on the agenda today, we are going to talk about the Great Place to Work for All methodology. What exactly is it about? What are some of the changes that we have done in the last couple of years? We'll also talk about the certification process, and finally we'll look at some of the insights from the best company study from last year, so for which we awarded the companies in the couple of months back. So we look at some of those insights. Why are we doing this session today? Why talk about the Great Place to Work for All methodology? As many of you would know, we have Great Place to Work has been in this for last 30 years. We are a global framework. We run this in more than 90 countries. And last year we covered more than 10 million employees. That's about more than 1 crore employees across the globe. 10,000 companies and 92 languages were covered. Our mission is to make, in India, we say our mission is to make India a great place to work for all. And globally, we say we want to help organizations create great places to work for all their employees. And taking that cue from that, we keep evolving. Our methodology keeps evolving over time. Since this is about 30-year-old framework, we keep changing with times, depending on the last 2 years we went through, hybrid era. The Gen Z is now coming into the workforce, and there's a lot of changes happening. We're no longer the 30 years back, it was more manufacturing oriented economics. Today's more professional services-led economic growth is happening globally. So we keep evolving with our methodology, and the idea is to keep it for all. So when we evolve our methodology, we keep something that does not change. Employees at the center. Whatever changes that we do, employees always at the center for us. And how do you create a great place to work for all? For us, it is a very simple one-line definition, but something that can take years and years to implement at organizations. But what is required is the will of the leadership team and the conscious effort to make this happen. So how do you define a great place to work for all? It's an organization that maximizes human potential. That's at the center. Maximizing human potential is the center by building trust through effective leadership, meaningful values that result in improved innovation and financial growth. We will talk about some of these things in detail as we proceed, but maximizing human potential is the center. And how, when we evaluate any organization, we look at through that through 2 lenses. The first lens is the employee feedback. What is it that my employees are saying about what they experience in their organization on day-to-day basis, or on the lot of the moments of truth that employees experience in the organization. So when we look at from employees' point of view, There are three key levers, three key relationships that an employee has in the organization. Number one is the management team. Number two is my work. And number three is my colleague and my team. When we talk about management, we measure employee experience on three dimensions when we talk about management. The number one being credibility. What exactly is credibility? In credibility, we measure things like competence, integrity of the management. Is employee perception on management keeping them informed about important decisions? Is my management competent in running the business? And does my management deliver on its promises? So that credibility encompasses everything, about competence, integrity of the management. Second very important aspect that we have here is respect. What exactly is respect? When we talk about respect, we talk about on a broad canvas, some of the important contours that we look at is support and collaboration and caring. Do employees get the support to enhance in their career? Do they get the right kind of training and development to enhance in their careers? Do they feel involved in decision making? And do they think that management shows a sincere interest in them as a person and not just as an employee? So the three important aspects of respect are support, collaboration, and caring. The third very important aspect when we talk about management is the employee's expectation about being fairness. When we talk about fairness, we talk about equity, we talk about impartiality, and we talk about justice. And how do we measure all of this? It's about, do I feel that I'm paid fairly for the work that I do? And does everyone in my organization has equal chance of special recognition? Do we treat our employees fairly, irrespective of their race, their beliefs, their gender, or from where they come from? And at the end of the day, if I think I've been impartially treated, do I have the right forums to get justice? Every organization, there might be sometimes, you will feel that this is not happening fairly. So do you have the right forums to get justice? That's about management. Those are the first three dimensions. The next dimension that we have here is about pride. Pride in my personal job, pride in the team that I work with and the corporate image. Do I feel that I make a difference in what I do? Do I take pride in what my organization is achieving and how my job is contributing to that success? Can I relate to the organization's success? And do I feel proud of telling others that I work for my organization? And the last aspect that we have is camaraderie. Camaraderie is nothing but intimacy, feeling of intimacy, hospitality, and community. It has people celebrating special events. Is it a fun place to work? And is it an organization where we are all in this together? So that's about camaraderie. So we ask employees about their experience in each of these 5 dimensions, and we come up with a holistic, something we call as the trust index score. The second lens that we look at, and something I spoke about on my previous slide, is the overall culture audit. We call it the culture audit. Is nothing about some of the people, how are the people practices evolving and being implemented in our organization. So the very first here is the trust. What key qualities, is my organization depict? How do we create this unique environment that is very unique to us, very original to us? As they say, every interaction is an opportunity to build trust. Trust is not something that is built overnight. It's like it's a reservoir that you keep building. So that's why I say for management, every interaction is an opportunity to build trust. So what are the practices that you have to build trust? The second most critical aspect, trust is, of course, the founding blocks, but something which is very, very important right now is how do you maximize human potential? How do you ensure that regardless of the job that I do or any employee is doing, are treated as full member and they can reach their highest potential in the organization. So that's about maximizing human potential. Third is values. What are the core values that you stand for as an organization? Most of the organizations have a set of core values, and then those core values convert to employee value proposition or the customer value proposition. But what are the core values? And we want the organizations to share few examples. How do they bring those values into practice? Next is leadership effectiveness. And what is the strategy and philosophy for ensuring successful business? Leadership effectiveness is, does my leadership team action match its words? Do I have enough opportunities to interact with my leadership team? So that's about, do they know where my organization is going? So that's about leadership effectiveness. And last one is some of these things we have added very recently is innovation by all. As we said, once you have got trust, maximizing human potential and values, right, and the leadership team that cares and grows and has the right strategic vision, innovation is an outcome. And to nourish innovation in any organization, a leadership team has to nourish new ideas and has to develop better ways of talking about, mistakes and how things are done in the organization and how do they bring on big change. So those are the 5 aspects that we measure in culture audit. So we talked about the employee feedback, and this is the submission that is made by the organization. So once we have all of this information, what do we do with this information is something I'm going to talk about, and what are some of the nuances that are very, very critical. The very first aspect, for any organization is, how do I get Great Place to Work certified? What makes my organization eligible to be certified? So the very first criteria for an organization to be certified is, I spoke about employee experience, employee feedback, is getting a minimum score of 70% on your employee experience. We call it the trust index. That's a measure of trust your employees have in your organization, considering all the 3: management, team, and work. You're considering all the 3 aspects. So you have to score, organization has to score at least a 70% score on that, to be eligible for certification. Apart from that, we also ask organizations to submit certain specific organization related information. We call it the culture brief. Submit details about the organization, the breakup of the workforce, what are the benefits that you provide in your organization, the split of women employees across various, job roles, the salary. So we ask the salary brackets, how old is the organization? So we call it, because all of this finally goes into creating those enriching benchmarks that help us, provide those insights to the organizations that participate. And the idea is to, keep improving on this. So certification is the step 1. Now, once the organization is certified, every organization that is certified, they become eligible for, various rankings that we have. So some of the marquee lists that we have, that's the best places to work, top 100 for large organizations, and best mid-sized organizations or best mid-sized workplaces, that is for organization up to 1,000 employees. And then we have a lot of industry recognitions also. How do we, once the certification is done, how do we, rank organizations? And I'm going to talk in brief about that, because that's very critical. When we saw, the employee feedback, the trust index, and we saw the culture audit, the 5 dimensions. The weightage that we have is the employee feedback has about 75% weightage in the overall scheme of things, and the culture audit submission across those 5 dimensions has about 25% weightage. And when we say 75%, it is not just what your employees are saying and we take the average of that. There's a lot of details that goes into it. When we look at any organization, apart from looking at the average, we call it the grand mean, apart from looking at the average score of an organization, we also look at what is the consistency of experience that their employees are, experiencing in the workplace. When we talk about MHP or consistency of experience, we look at 5 key demographics which are listed here. We look at consistency of experience, gender across gender, male and female. We look at managerial levels, that's individual contributors, supervisory, mid-level managers, and senior managers. What is the consistency of experience? Then age groups up to 25, then 25 to 35, and so on. Then work status, part-time and full-time. Now, part-time, we have a lot of gig workforce entering workplace. We have a lot of organizations that provide this, associate or part-time roles. So we just want to make sure that they also feel included. And the last is a tenure in the organization. I'll just share one example how consistency is measured, because that is very critical. Just take a second. So let me just take one example. Let me take age as an example of how we measure consistency of experience. Okay, and what it means. So if I were to look at age buckets that we have when we survey any organization, we have 5 buckets, under 25, 25 to 35, 35 to 45, 45 to 55, and over 55. For calculating consistency of experience, we compare each bucket with the rest of the buckets. So if you see this step diagram that I have created, that's just to explain how it works. So I will compare the experience of my under 25, which is mostly Gen Z, with rest of the organization. Then under 35 should be mostly millennials with rest. Under 45, that's Gen Z plus millennials and some Gen Yers also, combination of that with, and then under 55 with rest. So this is very important, because when we talk about for all, the same thing is used for the 5 demographics that I say. If I have to compare male and female, I will compare the scores of my male employees with my female employees. If the consistency is very important, of course, you'll say, let's say, and it's not about just 1 or 2 point difference. In most of the large organizations that we work with, there will be some differences. There will be some score variations that will always happen. But if those variations are big and large, and which is not in line with the minimum consistency that we want to maintain, because that's we call it statistically significant. As soon as the difference is more than statistically significant difference, any organization that has a higher difference, they get the scores are adjusted on the lower side. So organizations that are able to maintain consistency of experience, for them the average score is the overall score. But organizations that are not able to maintain consistency, the scores are adjusted downwards, slightly. But that's a backend that takes care of, and it's consistently applied to all the organizations that participate with us, whether it's 1,000 plus organizations that participated last year, and every organization goes through the same process. So that's one. Second, we spoke about, so trust is the average of all the scores, and we spoke about MHP. And then I'll just speak briefly about the 3 new dimensions that I spoke about, leadership effectiveness, innovation by all, and values. So there are some statements or some areas that are looked at while we look at the effectiveness of leadership team. Number 1 being strategic cohesion. Management has a clear view of where the organization is going, or management is approachable and easy to talk with. We have also introduced something where where we ask organization employees how much confidence do they have in the executive team judgment. So all of this goes into getting the leadership effectiveness score of any organization. Similar breakup we have for innovation by all, where the areas are listed down. And then for where we talk about opportunities to try out new ideas without being judged or feeling, getting a feeling of being judged. And the last is values, action matching words, delivering on promises. And so these three have some, these three areas are also very critical to create a great place to work for all experience for all the employees. So we talked about the overall PI trust scores. Then we spoke about the culture audit evaluation, the 5 dimensions. Then we spoke about the breakup, 75-25. 25 is for culture audit. 75 is the P trust score, but trust score combining with the consistency of experience. That is very critical. And the 3 breakups after that: leadership effectiveness, innovation by all, and values. So all in all, all of this goes into that 100 points that we saw to create a final score or final score that we use for ranking organizations. And when we look at the summation culture audit, 3I score is employee feedback on a 1 to 5 point scale, where 4 and 5 are positive ratings, 1 and 2 are negative ratings, and 3 is inconsistent. But when we do the culture audit evaluation, we do the star rating. We don't do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what it means, a star rating of 0 or 1 is, poor submission or poor, 2 is about average, 3 is good, 4 is very good, and 5 is exceptional or world-class practices. So if an organization has world-class practices in any of these areas, they'll get about 5 stars. 4 is very good, still very good, and 3 is good, and anything less than 2 is average. So we do star rating of, the culture audit that gets submitted to us by the organizations. Now we have looked at the evaluation part. Now, this is the calendar which is available on our website. This is the year-round calendar which is available on our website. So I'll not spend too much time on this. I'll proceed to the key insights from the Great Place to Work study from last year, the best top 100 study that we did. Okay. So what are the key from best companies to work for in 2022? We had, as I said, we had more than 1,000 companies participating across the large and the mid-size, and every year, we get something different, some themes or some key drivers which are very unique or very different from the past years. And this year was no different. The number one thing that we saw in organizations was sustaining what they were able to achieve last year. If you see the scores here, I have plotted last 6 years scores. The red line is the trust index grand mean, the average of all the statements that we have in the survey across all the 5 dimensions. If you see, the scores this is the scores of India inclusive, all the organizations that participated with us. So that was about 74, 75, and then it catapulted from 77 to 82. But there's a huge 5-point jump, and that's the COVID year. So that's the first year of COVID. And that's amazing, because what it tells is that organizations really went the extra mile to take care of their employees, to protect jobs of their employees. And I think that's the experience we saw across the India Inc. Of course, I will not say that is true for 100% of the organization, but that is something we saw. Leadership teams going the extra mile to ensure, the jobs are retained. And we saw that 2022, we saw increase in the jobs. We saw a huge increase in the overall positive sentiment. The organizations, able to maintain that sentiment, that was created last year. So if you see my trust index scores, it has not gone down to the pre-COVID level. Of course, we will see this year also, see how it goes, but it has gone up by 1 point. And what we see is my overall grand mean. What is my overriding sentiment? Overriding sentiment is something we ask organizations, employees, is taking everything into account. I would say this is a great place to work. Usually at Great Place to Work, we say this is your mind. This is what you answer from your mind, and the grand mean is your brains. So I live in Bombay, so I might complain about a lot of things about Bombay. Say we have this potholes during rains, but at the end of the day, would I leave Bombay? My answer is no. So that's because that's taking everything into account. I would say I would want to continue living in Bombay or Mumbai. Um, so that's your overriding sentiment, and it's always healthy to have that positive leverage between your overriding sentiment and your trust index grand mean, because that means there's always that I can always increase my overall grand mean if there is a positive leverage that I have between overriding sentiment and the grand. Any organization that has a grand mean lower than that means the next they have huge amount of work to do, and eventually the scores will fall down further. But you have this positive leverage, that means the scores can go in the positive direction further. Other key insight that we saw, and we focused on what is it the leadership behaviors. What is it that the leaders did in the best workplaces to maintain the difference, to maintain the gap between the rest, and to consistently maintain the score of 80 to 83 that we just saw. Very first thing, very first key driver that we saw was involvement in decision making. Very critical. And if you look at the scores of the involvement in decision making, if you see my overall grand mean, it is still 80 to 83. Involvement in decision making is still lower than my grand mean, but this is a very important key driver. So whenever we see this sentiment improving in any organization, the overall grand mean for the organization tends to go higher. So management involving employees, people in decision that affect their job has a absolute positive correlation with the overall sentiment of the employees in the organization. So, and this is something we have consistently observed, through many years. The second thing that is very critical that we saw is the power of purpose. I'll talk about this. What is purpose? And it's about my job. It's about how does my job contribute to the organization goal? How does my job contributing to the overall achievement of my team goals? And do I feel a sense of accomplishment on doing what I do? Okay, so if you see this, okay, and the red bar is the average for rest of the organizations, and blue bar is the average for the top 100. So the best organizations, or top 100, are able to clearly demarcate themselves from the rest when it comes to power of purpose. Employees feel more aligned in best workplaces. Employees have a sense of purpose, and employees feel that they make a difference to the organization goals. So involvement in decision making has a clear impact on this. So if I don't feel involved in decision making, I will never feel that I make a difference, or I will probably not be very sure, does my job have a special meaning or not. So that's a key driver, and this is something that's a very clear outcome of involving employees in decision making, and we can see a clear difference. The third important aspect that we saw this year was, and this is very important, especially when our employees are working in hybrid mode, and or some of the employees are back to office, some of the employees are still continue to work from home, and people traveling from working from anywhere in India, people taking workations. So career growth, and so it's not that if I want to hire talent in Bombay, I will just look for people based out of Bombay. It does not matter whether the talent is based out of. So the talent market, talent pool, and the opportunities for the employees are ample. So it is very important for organizations to invest in the growth of and development of those employees. And this is again something we can see. There is a clear difference between best and the rest. If I look at my best scores, I can see there's about 7 to 8-point difference where I see, I'm offered training or development to further myself professionally. There's a 8-point difference between best and the rest. There are opportunities for my career growth. Again, we see a 7-point difference, and I'm given the resources and equipment to do my job. Here, the difference is not as big, but still there is difference. So it is imperative for organizations, to that's the reason we see a lot of this edtech, online learning, open courseware, all of this. There just has been like huge market growth for organizations that are in this space because then micro learning platforms. So I think it is that the whole concept of providing learning and growth opportunity, and how do you and cross team growth, cross team leverage opportunities are increasing. So there's a whole market that has blossomed because of providing learning opportunities to the employees. And all of this, so we looked at some of the areas at leadership. What we said, what we saw, all of this will not be possible, or will not happen unless we are able to create a great place to work for all. So what we observed in our analysis or insights is that the for all workplaces, and this is a clear difference, 17-point difference, the best organizations are able to create a more innovative environment for their employees. So if you see this course on innovation by all, the slide that I saw, the statements that measure innovation by all, the culture audit submission that measures innovation by all, the organizations that are amongst the best in India have a clear difference between the rest. And there's a lot of catch up to do. So, so a difference which might be, so this is like a domino effect. A difference that was about 2 to 3 points in the overall grand mean becomes about 5 to 7 points when it comes to sense of purpose, becomes about 8 to 10 points when it comes to career development and all of that, and then becomes about 15 to 17 when we talk about the overall culture of innovation. It's like a dominoes effect. So see, that's what I'm trying to say. And this is the narrative. And if we have to create a culture of innovation, we have to provide learning opportunities, we have to provide a sense of purpose, and we have to involve employees in decision making. And once we do all of those three things, I think this is an outcome which will happen. That's what I told about on the very first slide. Innovation of by all is an outcome that will happen if we create a great place to work for all, which is the MHP is maximizing human potential. How do I maximize human potential? Is by creating a consistent experience amongst all my employees and taking care of all the aspects that I just spoke about. And finally, all of this once achieved, I don't have another slide after this. This will also result in financial growth. Financial growth is a lag indicator. It's not that if all of this is happening in year 1, financial growth will also happen in year 1, because nowadays financial growth is measured in a lot of different ways. So it's not just the stock market returns, it's about, the capital raised for a startup, or gross merchandise sold, or the overall valuation. So there are multiple ways to measure the financial growth. So I'm not going into that. There's not one single slide that I can show which means financial growth. There are different ways. So it is very important for the organizations to have that atmosphere, and which will eventually help in creating an innovation culture and helping the organization grow financially. And as we say, an organization that is better for people will result in better business process performance, and will eventually mean the world is a better place to live for all. So, better for people, better for business, better for the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Balbir. This was a very insightful session, and I'm sure there have been a lot of takeaways for the audience. We've got a lot of questions coming in. So first and foremost, for those of you that are keen to know whether you will be getting an access to the presentation and the recording, that's something I can clarify right out of the bat. We will be sending you and from this discussion, so you can refer to that along with the recording post the webinar as well. So Balbir, we will get started, and I'll possibly take the first question that we have from the audience. So there is a question around whether or not we will be doing a top 100 in the small size category, and similarly for NGOs as well. And to answer that, for the mid-size category, we do have a best companies ranking. For the small size category, this is something that we will see whether it's on the cards in the coming year or so. But currently, we don't have a recognition for the small organizations category. We still do certification for that category as well. For the NGOs, our rankings is going to come out very soon. In fact, we do a top 10 every year. And as and when we have more and more NGOs participating, we will be expanding that list even further. But very interestingly, any sort of certification or assessment that we do for NGOs is completely pro bono. So we want to encourage more and more not-for-profits and social service organizations to partner with us in their journey to becoming a great place to work.
So Akshat, I have a little question to that on that. When we say small, do you mean under 100 employees, or do you mean the small and mid-size, which is 100 to 1,000?
So that's a great question to ask, Balbir. So just to clarify, when we refer to small-sized organizations, these are organizations that are less than 100 employees, and mid-sized organizations where we currently do a very robust ranking is organizations that are between 100 to 1,000 employees in India.
Okay. Thank you, Akshat.
Balbir, the next question, I think we have a very interesting one that I will relate to Great Place to Work after getting certified. So Balbir, I'll repeat my question.
Sorry. Yeah. I think there was a slight voice break in between. So if you can just repeat your question, Akshat.
Sure. So what are the other ways in which people can associate with Great Place to Work after getting certified?
I think that's a great question. I think after certification, the immediate thing that happens, for any organization is, we do share the digital marketing kit with the organization, so they can, brand or use the logo in their signatures on their website. So that's the very first thing that happens after certification, where we share the digital marketing kit with the organization. The second thing, that is something that we have launched very recently, is GCC. That's a great certification club, and my colleagues from my events team will share the further details on that, where we are creating a separate club for certified organizations. Okay, and any organization that gets certified becomes eligible, depending on the size of the organization, of course, becomes eligible to be either the top 100, which is large size top 100 organization, to be in the running for that, or the mid-size organization, which is 100 to 1,000 employees, to be in the running for that. And depending on the industry that the organization belongs to, we do not have separate industry recognition for all the industries, but most of the big industries that do participate in a big way, there are a lot of big industries, and like BFSI, IT, manufacturing, retail. You already spoke about NGO. And this, so we also have a separate industry recognition for these industries. And yeah, those are some of the opportunities that we keep creating. And there's a separate page that gets created on our website for every certified organization. So you will have access. So there will be a separate page that will be created on our website where you can use that on your website, on your signature for, for talent to see about you or organization, experience you, and then apply.
Great. Thank you, Balbir. I'll take the next question. This question is, could we get some templates on how to fill the culture audit questions? So the answer is yes. Once an organization signs up, we make various guidelines in the form of text and videos available to them, which will give them the do's and don'ts and some tips on how to go about structuring the submission. So as and when you sign up with us to get the process started, these guidelines and these sort of video tutorials can be shared with you. The next question that we have, and Balbir, you can possibly take this one. Is the culture audit going to be measured this year too? I was informed that the culture audit may be removed ahead. Has anything changed from last year to this year or ahead on the culture audit?
I think that's another very good question. So let me just clarify, there has been change in the way we evaluate culture audit or way we collect information. We used to collect culture audit in 15 practice areas. Now that change was already applicable last year also, where we collected culture audit information in 5 dimensions that I spoke about: trust, maximizing human potential, values, leadership, effectiveness, and innovation by all. So we continue to collect. Culture audit is not a mandate for certification. So as soon as you meet your certification threshold of 70 and submit the culture brief information, certification will be available to the organization. But culture audit, this new revised culture audit, which was revised last year also, is mandatory for the recognition to be eligible to be, for the top 100 or the mid-size or the industry recognitions. It is mandatory for recognitions, but not mandatory if you just want to participate for certification. Culture audit submission is not mandatory.
Great. Thanks, Balbir. The next question, which I can quickly answer, is how does an organization initiate the Great Place to Work certification and what are the commercials involved? So to whoever's asked this question, you can actually approach any one of us. You can write into us and we'll be happy to take you through the entire process and share the commercials involved basis your objectives behind undertaking the process. Alternately, you can also visit our website and drop your details on the contact us form, and we will have our team get in touch with you within the next 24 to 48 hours. Before we move forward with any of the other questions, we would like to quickly capture your feedback on this session. Since many of you will start dropping out soon, it'll be a good idea for us to know what you felt about the session. So our team will be launching a very quick poll to capture your feedback, and we will resume with the rest of the questions right after. So you will all now be seeing a poll on your screen. Please do share your feedback on this session before we proceed with the rest of the Q&A. Great. We'll give it another 10 to 15 seconds. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your feedback. And we will, of course, incorporate these inputs in the webinars to come. But moving on to the next question. How can we have consistency in tenure when you have a settled team and not a lot of new hiring is being done? People are working for years in their profiles and managing the work well.
Yeah. I think that's another good question, and I love answering this question. When we talk about consistency in tenure, we're not talking about consistency in the number of people in each tenure bucket. Or we're talking about consistency of experience. So when my trust index survey questionnaire goes to someone who is 20 years into the organization, or someone who is 5 years into the organization, or someone who has joined recently, what is the consistency of experience that, if I look at the final score, is there a huge difference between these scores, or is it consistent? When we say consistent, we don't say 70 equal to 70. We talk about, statistically consistent score, because depending on the size of the organization, if it's a small size, the consistency is calculated slightly different, because all of this is statistically proven. And if it's a really large organization, consistency score will be slightly different. So depending on the size of the organization and depending on the bucket sizes, if one bucket is very large and the bucket is small, all of those are taken into consideration. And it does not matter if you do not have any employees who are less than 2 years of experience, it takes care of that, and compares the rest of the buckets that are available.
Thanks, Balbir.
Thanks.
I'll take the next two questions, which are a little more specific. Yeah. One is, what should be the size of the organization to get this certification, and how long is the certification valid for? So any organization that has a minimum of 10 employees on their roles in India can actually apply for this certification. We work with organizations right from 10 employees up to even in 100,000s. And the certification, once you get it, will be valid for a period of 1 year. So organizations do this as an annual exercise where they would renew it year on year by undertaking the same assessment. And that will also ensure that you have the rigor in seeking feedback and working on it. The next question, Balbir, that I will refer to you is, there's a question that asks, how do we track our action plan progress during the year, and if there are some suggestions around it?
Yeah, I think let's say you have completed your survey, you have got some great insights, and you have identified what are the areas. So, there are a lot of tools available in the market to track action plan, but it's about change. It's about managing the change. It's about the commitment of the leadership team. You can use any tool that you want to use. That's, you can even do with Excel, or if you're using Trust Impact, we have a tool which we provide to organizations for reporting. Once the survey is over, they can play with their data, slicing and dicing. That tool itself has an add-in for action planning. So any organization that is interested, once they have looked at their data and they just want to do action planning on the 3 top areas that they have identified, that feature is available in Trust Impact platform itself, where they can pick up, create their action plans, measure the performance of those action plans, and see how they are doing against those action plans. And with action plans, I think some of the do's and don'ts, we also share some of the best practices with organizations, on the action plans or the activities, or what is it that some of the best organizations are doing. That's one area to pick up your action plans. Second is not to have a laundry list. Identify those top 3 areas that has the commitment of your leadership team, and how is that percolated down to everyone in the organization. And I believe I'm a big believer of this Lean Six Sigma principle of DMAIC: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So what you want to control, you have to first define it. Unless you define it, you will not be able to improve and control. So just define what is it that you want to measure, and then analyze, and then continue with your journey. And any tool is good enough if you have the commitment to follow through with your action plans.
I think just to add, consistency is the key for a lot of organizations. What we observe is, right after the survey results are in, there is a lot of excitement and a lot of rigor, but then that fizzles over time, as business takes over. So it's very important that you keep reviewing that constantly, and there is ownership and accountability at a leadership level as well to drive those action plans, and it's not just left to HR to do it single-handedly.
Yeah.
The next question that I can possibly take is compensation standard a criteria for certification? So the answer is no. Compensation is not a criteria for certification. However, there is one single question out of the 60+ statements that we have which is around are people paid fairly for the work that they do, and employees will give their feedback around how they feel about their pay commensurate to the work that they're doing. So that is one of the 60 plus statements that we asked in our survey, but it is not a criteria in any form in terms of eligibility for certification. The next question that I can ask Balbir is, what advice would you give an organization that has been Great Place to Work certified 4 years in a row, has not made it to the top 100 list of best companies to work for, and has also been submitting the culture audit for the last 3 years, except last year?
Yeah. So, we spoke about the values. So at Great Place to Work, we believe that great workplaces are our heroes. Okay. I cannot give any advice to an organization that has been Great Place to Work certified for 4 years. But what I can say is that, ranking is an outcome. Top 100. It's about if you're consistently creating that experience of great workplace for your employees. Eventually, I think ranking might happen one day. There's still no surety, but I think do not give up on the hope, because if you are, I think first, congratulations for making to the certification 4 years in a row. And as I said, you are our heroes. But apart from top 100, there are a lot of other avenues where we recognize great workplaces, because our pool keeps increasing Akshat year on year. So that's why we also have separate pool for mid-size. We have a lot of industry recognitions now, be it IT or BFSI. So there are a lot of avenues for organizations to be, recognized in one of the industry categories. And I think, and if you think you're doing great on Trust Index, and if you, I do not know which area you are, you probably need to work on. So I think we'll need a detailed chat on that. But I think that's what I can say right now, consistency of focus on the consistency of experience. If that is something that is not letting you rank, but unless I look at the details, I will not be able to comment.
Sure. Thanks, Balbir. I think it'll be good for you to get in touch with us. We'll be happy to explain where is the possible set of areas that you should focus on and make some recommendations on how can you bridge that gap going forward. I will take the next question, which is, what is the weightage given to culture audit and trust index scores? So while doing our rankings, we assign 3/4 or 75% of the weightage to the employee experience and 1/4 of the weightage to the culture audit or the people practices parameter. And there's a follow-up question which asks, can we get a report of how we did in the culture audit last year? And where do you stand versus other companies and where you can improve? Yes, that is possible. Please approach your relationship manager or your consultant that's working with you, or any of us, and we'll be happy to work with you in getting that report and the data available to you.
Akshat, I would just like to add,
sure,
couple of points to that. When we talk about 75% and 25%, that 75% is not just plain vanilla, the average score or the grand mean. It has 75% also looks at the consistency of experience. Okay, so that is so this is something we have been discussing, across all the 5 buckets. So you have to not just create a great organization for a few, but create a great organization for all. And consistency is also taken into consideration when we look at that 75% weight.
Thanks for clarifying, Balbir.
No problem.
The next question, again, a very interesting one. For organizations larger than 50,000 employees, how do you factor for the additional complexity in creating positive experiences right from leadership connect to career growth and innovation?
Okay. So, I think when we look at the overall, I think there has been another change that we did recently, is any organization that is up to 5,000 employees, we cover all the employees, okay? And any organization with more than 5,000 employees, we cover up to 5,000. So that's a big change that we did. So we get, for a really large organization, 50,000 or 100,000, instead of getting a small sample, we get to hear the voice of 5,000, which is a statistically giving, that's about 99% with 99% confidence, I can say that they represent the entire organization. That's one change we did to make sure that even larger organizations, we get a good representation. Second, for really large organizations, when we look at the culture audit submission, or when we look at, there is some consideration also given to the size of the organization. Okay, and that is part of the overall, the global methodology that we run across the globe. It does not matter whether it's happening in India or happening in USA or happening in Germany. So we also give some consideration to the size of the organization, depending on how big the organization is. So one is we cover a bigger set of employees right now, and we give some consideration to the size.
Thank you, Balbir. I think the last couple of questions we will take, since we're just 5 minutes from time. I will answer the next one, which is, does Gptw also look at psychological safety at work? So the answer is yes. We have one of our statements that talks about psychological and emotional well-being. So we have a dimension where we want to measure what is the amount of care that the organization is providing to the employee. One of the elements within that is psychological safety, along with work-life balance and flexibility to take time off from work. We also have a separate center of excellence that works in the space of workplace wellness, which looks at holistic well-being, including psychological safety being one particular element. So in case if you're keen to explore partnering us with that, you can definitely reach out to us. But to answer in brief, yes, it is one of the statements that we look at in the trust index survey that we run for organizations. I will also take the next question, which is, you have something called the Burnout Index, understanding that all your burnout questions were based on a rating scale. How is this range divided into low, medium, and high? And what is the number of the range that lies within the burnout area? So since this is a very specific question to your results and not everybody will be familiar with the Burnout Index, we would recommend that we take this offline with our relationship manager and consultant. We'll be happy to elaborate on your specific scores on the Burnout Index and how does it split into low, medium, high, and how did we arrive at that index as well. Balbir, the next question is for you. Do we have to involve contractors and consultants too? Or is it just the full-time employees that can take this survey? And by extension, there is one more question, which is around people that are freshers and on notice period as well.
Yeah, so we always recommend that you include contractors and consultants if they are playing a key role or they're part of a core function and they are part of the main business that you provide as an organization. So if if they are core to what you do, they are, and sometimes they have been with the organization for many years. They're contractors, but have been there for many years. So we always recommend that you include contractors and consultants. Of course, on case-to-case basis, we do discuss if it is, if they are playing a role which is not at all related to your main business. And, so we can discuss that, but we always recommend to include contractors and consultants. And when it comes to people who have joined recently or people who are on notice period, we want to create a workplace for all, great place to work for all. So I think it is very important to get people feedback from people who are on notice period. Very, very critical. So we do not leave them out. And for people who have joined the organizations, we recommend that you include them. But if they have joined the organization within the first 30 days, okay, that is the only time where we allow them to be excluded, or else never. So we recommend that you include, but if they have just joined in the last 1 week or 15 days, in that cases, and by the time, it is okay to exclude them. But otherwise, always include all your people on notice period, because it's very important to get their feedback, because they become the brand ambassadors of the organization when they go out. And we can also, do some insights and analysis basis what they were saying, people who were on notice period. So that's the answer.
Great. Balbir, thank you so much for facilitating such a wonderful session. I'm sure it has been very insightful, and thank you to the audience for staying engaged throughout. We're very happy to see some of the questions that have come in. Do accept our apologies in case we've not been able to answer all of them. But we'll be happy to do that with you either in person or over a virtual call. So do reach out to us if there are still some aspects you need to discuss, or if there are questions that are unanswered. We will in any case be sharing a recording of this session along with the key takeaways for you to refer to. But once again, thank you so much. This is just the first of many series of webinars that we will be organizing on various themes. So stay tuned for that. And Balbir, thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Akshat, for facilitating the Q&A and answering questions along with me and helping me with my throat. And thank you everyone who joined and sharing your feedback. And we look forward to being in touch again. Thank you.